Psalms 30, verses 10 through 12, New Living Translation. Hear me, Lord, and have mercy on me. Help me, O Lord. You have turned my mourning into joyful dancing. You have taken away my clothes of mourning and clothed me with joy, that I might sing praises to you and not be silent. O Lord, my God, I will give you thanks forever.
So about a year ago, ish to the date, on social media, you released a project, Not Miserable in Gary. Tell me a little bit about that.
So Paul reached out to me about that, and I thought it was a really cool idea because we shot it in that abandoned church. And I actually done a project in there before, so it was kind of cool to revisit it and see how different it was. And I really connected with the title because when I came back to Gary after being away in college for so many years, a lot of people were like, "Why'd you come back? That's not the ideal place to be." So I really connected with his vision with that project. And so with this particular one, it was sort of connected because I wanted to showcase how my childhood growing up in Gary was not necessarily a miserable one, as many people might assume growing up in Gary would be. So I was able to highlight the different places that I grew up around the city, which was literally everywhere, almost every corner of Gary. So it was exciting in that way.
Yes. So when I heard about the project, Paula hit me up and said there's a project Briana has in mind. Are you down? But I'm not going to give you details. I'm going to ask you first. And then I got an email from you saying that you have this purpose project that you want to do, but I'd be interested in being a part of it. And I was immediately like, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know which happened first. We did a Zoom or you emailed us locations. Whichever happened first, you sent us all these addresses for different places. And I'm not from Gary, so I had no idea what this stuff was, why we were doing it. Okay, cool. But I was still with it. Then comes day of shooting, and it was like, wait a minute, we're literally like going everywhere in gear, like different
Mm-hmm.
sides that I had never even seen before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And so I guess just tell me, without going deep into those different locations, what sparked that? Why did you want to go to these different? Why are we touring Gary?
So for me growing up, I feel like I was sort of like a nomad, never staying in a place for a very long time. So we bounced around a lot. It was me, my little brother, my mom, and this year has been a really big year of reflection for me, and for a lot of people with everything that's going on. And I've just been reflecting on my childhood, reflecting on the past, and thinking about how it's affecting me now as a woman, as a mother, as a wife. And I would just drive around the city, and different places would bring up different memories. And I was just thinking one day, like, it would be pretty cool to go back and revisit those places and to capture a moment of joy in a place where I might not have always been experiencing joy, or might have, experienced some trauma in that place, but to go back and turn that thing around, to show it from a different perspective, that I'm now able to look back on it and say, look what I've overcome, look what I'm able to do, who I'm able to be in spite of those things. So it was really fun for me, because I drove around to each different place before the shoot just to try to scope out the scene, because I didn't know if how many places were abandoned or if people were living there. So it was just like this memory reel, like walk down memory lane, going through my mind as I visited each place, and how many great things, how many not so great things happened at each location, and just really being thankful that, I didn't allow those things, or that not ideal situation of not having that stability of being in one home for, an extended period of time, to inhibit me from still growing and still being an inspiration. So it was exciting for me.
So you were born and raised in Gary. Did you go to school?
I was actually not born in Gary.
Oh, okay.
I was born in San Diego. My mom had me, she was in the military. She had me on the naval base. And I think we moved back to Gary even before I turned 1. So I always say I'm from Gary, because that's all I remember. So I'm like, I'm from Gary, 219. So, but I grew up here my entire life.
Okay. You went to high school in Gary.
Yes, Emerson School for the Visual and Performing Arts, the greatest school in Gary. Tornadoes.
When you graduated high school,
So after high school, I was a dance major at Emerson. After high school, I went to the Juilliard School in New York City. So in 8th grade, we watched Save the Last Dance. And that was my inspiration, that I wanted to go to Juilliard. I was like, I'm going to that school. I'm going to audition. That's where I want to go. I told my teacher, Mr. Brewer, and he's like, okay, you're going to have to work really hard. And I don't even think he really knew whether or not how serious I was. I was like, I'm adamant. Like, that's where I want to go. But he supported me. My family supported me. And I actually ended up doing their summer intensive the year after my junior year in high school, and then auditioned my senior year and got accepted into the dance program. And I got my Bachelor in Fine Arts degree there in 2013. So that's where I was.
why didn't you stay in New York?
Well, after I graduated, I was a part of a production for about a year in Brooklyn. It was like an off-Broadway production. And after that, it just seemed like no doors were opening for me. Every audition that I went to, it was just like, nope, nothing. And so I felt like I was being pulled on to come back home. And there were some family issues too, where I felt it was important for me to come back home, even though in my mind, and as far as my career and the things that I aspired to do, coming home was not in that playbook. But again, I was obedient to where I felt God was leading me to, and that was to come back home and to be a support system to my little brother, a support system to my mom, to my grandmother, and just being around family again was refreshing, even though, I was unsure of what the future was going to hold and what coming back home was going to mean, as far as my career, as far as my purpose, as far as the different goals that I had. So I just came home out of slight obedience because I didn't want to, and just, that's how it unfolded.
When you got back home, was it easy to find your place, fit in, find a job? How did that go?
It definitely wasn't easy. It was not a smooth transition for me because I'm like, okay, I'm back here. Now what am I going to do? There's different companies in Chicago. And even when I first moved back, I auditioned for a dance company and got rejected, didn't get, hired right away. And I was just like, okay, why am I here? What am I going to do? And I actually ended up getting more involved with the church and leading the youth praise dancers and getting more involved with the adult praise dance ministry. So I started to find myself getting more encouraged from that, just being more involved. I started teaching dance a lot more at the studio that I grew up at, South Shore Dance Alliance, that I'm still teaching at. And I started to feel more fulfilled. I didn't feel like as lost, where am I going? And I found a peace about it because I was just really trusting God that He was going to lead me in the right direction that He wanted me to be in. And I feel like he did that, and He's continuing to do that now.
So now let's talk about these 10 different places that we went. Again, like I said, for me, I'm not from Gary, so I have no clue. Then when we showed up, I'm gonna be honest with you, they weren't in the best shape.
No.
And then you said this is where you grew up, this is home.
Mm-hmm.
So not first place we went, but the first place chronologically on the list was a church that we went to. What is significant, not about necessarily that church, but just that area? How old were you when you were there?
So that was actually the second chronologically, but I think I was between 3, 4, and 5. But it actually, in the Miller area of Gary, it was like a project housing authority, I guess that's what you call it, or a project. We call it the projects. But now it's there's swanky apartment townhomes that are in that spot. And I have pretty vague memories from that place. I remember I had a pet fish. Her name was Princess. I think she was pink and purple. I don't even know how a fish could be pink and purple. That's a whole nother story. But I remember when she died. That's like a traumatic moment for me, and us having to flush her. And I think we had a cat there too. So it's really, really vague memories there. But it's interesting that you said, those are my homes, and those places never felt like a home to me.
So I know we skipped the first one, we will go back, but Juilliard graduate living in the projects. That's not a common thing. And I guess I'm still tripping about the fact that the rest of the world sees Gary as this scary place.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to be there, and you listen to God whether you liked it or not, to just all right, you're saying go back, and I have to find my way, and you did that,
Mhm.
it's worked, and it still is working to this day.
Mhm.
Um, let's talk now about the first, chronologically, Arthur Street.
Mhm. Arthur Place.
Arthur Place.
Get it right.
Arthur Place.
Mhm.
15, what is it?
I think it's 1523.
1523 Arthur Place.
Mhm. So that was actually my grandmother's home. I could be getting this wrong, so my mom might have to fact check me afterwards. But I think once we moved back from California, I think that's where we were staying for a little while with my grandmother. And that place, to me, I think out of all of them, in my mind, if I were to imagine like what home felt like, it would be there. My mom taught me how to ride a bike on that street in front of that house. I still have the scar from when I fell. My grandmother would always cook the family meals there. I have really vivid memories of my great-grandfather. I'm gonna cry. So going back there, it was special. It was like a little warmth. Even though, like, when we pulled up, I'm like, why is the house red? They painted the house red. It used to be blue. But it was just so cool to me, like, the next door neighbor that was there when we pulled up, he was, like, so lit. So excited, like, ooh, I'm going live on Facebook to catch you guys. So I sort of felt like somehow the memories of my great-grandfather were there. So it was just like the whole flow of that day just felt so perfect to me. And especially shooting there, it was something different about it. And special because those are probably some of the happiest times that I remember in my childhood, like Christmas. I have like this weird memory of getting a Furby. People probably don't even know what a Furby is. And just how my grandmother would set up the Christmas tree. So, and I think the reason why I said like the other spots didn't feel like home is because I guess I didn't really know what to define a home as feeling like. Because to me, home was the people. Home was my mother. You know, I didn't have my father growing up. I've never met him, don't know what he looks like, wouldn't know him if he walked right next to me. So home for me was just love and support. So, you know, just the fact that I was constantly bouncing around, to me at the time, it wasn't like strange or abnormal. You know, I'm just, you know, because what am I basing it off of? You know, I would watch TV shows, you know, and see like family dinners and this and that. And so that's what I would like compare what home was. But outside of that, you know, home to me was family. And so, you know, the constant moving around at the time, you know, I didn't see it as such a negative thing. You know, as I got a little bit older, I was, you know, started to question it, like, why are we moving around so much? But yeah.
At what point did you realize that this moving around thing may not be normal?
I think once I started at Emerson,
Okay.
so that's like 6th grade, so 11, 12, 13. Once I started, you know, making more friends, because I was really shy as a kid. No surprise there. So I was pretty much quiet, kept to myself. in elementary school, before that, I went to Highland Christian School, which is actually not too far from here. And I was like one of 2 black kids in my class. So that was like another part of the reason why I was pretty much, to myself. And I didn't really feel like that was too much of a barrier. But so once I got to Emerson and started getting more social, I guess dance allowed me to do that, gave me that freedom to get more social, because I started connecting to other people. We had things in common. And, they would ask me about my family dynamic, or I would see their family dynamic, and, that's when I start to get a little bit like, this is different. What I've experienced is different. So yeah, around that age, 12, 13, once I started making friends, I guess, and even then, I didn't really feel comfortable per se, in really sharing my experience with them, because I'm like, that's when I started to realize that it wasn't what they had experienced. So it took a while. Even like the friends who were closest to me didn't even know certain things, because I just was like, we'll just leave that little detail out.
445 Jefferson Street.
So that house is interesting because my mother had recently gotten married. So that was a whole new dynamic for me, because now I have a stepfather, and he also had a son, so he shortly moved in with us afterwards. So now I have a stepfather, and that was completely new to me. I did not like it at first at all, because I was just used to it being the 2 of us up until that point. So that particular apartment building was right behind the public library in Gary. So that was like my getaway place, my place of refuge. I was a total nerd. I loved reading books, loved getting on the computers there. So that's what stands out the most to me for that place.
So acquiring a stepdad, you didn't like him? You didn't like the change? What?
It wasn't so much that I didn't like him. It was just the change. I didn't like change. So, which is ironic, because we were constantly changing locations, and I think it wasn't really fully explained to me, too, this new dynamic that was about to take place, or at least I don't recall it ever being explained. Like, I'm married, you're gonna have a stepfather now. So it was just like, it just seemed to be happening so fast to me, at that age especially. And like I said, I was comfortable with what was my normal, and my normal before that was just me and my mom, spending time with my grandmother. So now I'm like, who's this trying to take my spot, trying to take my shine, trying to take my mom away from me? When you're young, that's how you look at it. And, you don't know about, what your mother is going through or what she's thinking about. So it was different, for sure.
Did you end up having a successful relationship there? You mentioned you having a stepbrother who lived with you now. How did that go? Did you guys ever see eye to eye and just accept this is what it is and let's live life?
I think we eventually got there. It took a while. It definitely took a while. It was a process. I think we sort of butt heads a lot at first, because we were very similar in the fact that we liked to be to ourselves and quiet. So it was kind of just like that awkward relationship for a while. Like, we didn't know what to say. So once it got over that awkward phase, I feel like I started to embrace him a little bit more, and embrace the change, especially, once I started to see, how happy my mom was, and just to see that different dynamic in her, it started to make a little bit more sense to me, and I started to grow a little bit more comfortable with the change.
At that point, were you already into dancing? Were you just trying to figure it out?
I think so. My mom, she had me go to, I think it was like a summer arts camp in Gary. I'm pretty sure it was like this free arts camp that the city was offering. And I wanted to take the drumming class because she was a drummer. Yes. She played the snare drum, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. So I was like, I'm going to take the drumming class and cheerleading. And I actually I ended up taking the drumming class. So I don't know if anything stuck, but I think that was where like one of my passions for music started, actually. But the cheerleading class was full. So the only other class that they offered, it was like a praise dance class, but I think they called it like liturgical dance. That's how most people recognize it. And it ended up changing my life. So that was really my first introduction to dance, was through that praise dance class. So I always think about like, what if the cheerleading class was not full? Who would I be, today? But the woman who taught the praise dance class, she ended up becoming like one of my greatest mentors. And she had like a youth praise dance group. It was like a traveling, like we toured Gary performing, well, not performing, but ministering at different churches and dancing at different locations throughout the city. She would host like cotillions and just like all sort of big events for youth throughout the city. So I always say like my introduction to dance was dance as a tool to tell a story. And that always applies to me now. Like even as a professional artist, I see dance as storytelling. And I feel like that can be lacking in a lot of artists, where to them dance is like, you put it on a show, it's glitz and glamour. But to me, dance was how I like found my voice, and how I expressed what was on the inside and what I wasn't always necessarily able to do with words, or I didn't think I could do through words. Dance was that outlet for me. So that was actually, it was around that time. And I think, of course, in God's timing, it was perfect timing, because in the middle of that whole transition with the family dynamic, God like planted me in that spot for being introduced to dance to help me really get through that in a way.
So thus far, it's safe to say that everything, even though we're not done with this journey, everything has happened for a reason. If it hadn't have happened, you have no idea where you'd be or how you'd be.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So now you're about 9, 10, 11, 12, that age
Mm-hmm.
range. I have kids, and I know that like reaching that point of life, you don't know everything, but you know some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's no more like just watching. You watch, you've learned, and now you got a little voice.
Mm-hmm.
You got some emotions, and so here we are. We're moving again.
Mm-hmm.
Do you start asking questions at that point?
I don't remember myself asking a lot of questions. From my perspective now, I feel like I wish I would have, and I wish, more things would have been broken down or explained to me. And maybe they were, and I just don't remember. But around that, I believe I was 11 when my mom had my little brother. And again, it was like one hurdle after the next. I'm like, okay, stepfather, stepbrother, now a new baby? I'm like, what? So, that was really difficult, because it was like, a baby now is stealing my shine. This baby is getting all the attention now. And so, and I don't really remember ever being around babies or being around, little kids up until that point too. So again, that was right around the time I started at Emerson. So again, it was like always my getaway. Dance was my escape. Instead of really working through my emotions, really working through it, I was always just escaping to that pacifier or that security blanket, and never really fully processing it how I probably should have. So yeah.
Tell me a little bit about you and your brother, maybe then and now the relationship, because you mentioned you came back home to take care of this baby that you escaped to Emerson to dance to get through, like emotionally you didn't know, so let's elaborate a little bit on the dynamic of that.
Yeah, so we're 11 years apart. So I sort of felt bad in a way when I went off to school, because I felt like I was like leaving him behind, but I was secretly like really happy. I'm like, yay, I get to escape. But we're pretty close now, and he actually stayed with me for a while once I graduated from school. Like a few years after, there was a little point in time where he was just living with me, and we really bonded during that time, because I was like the one taking him to school and picking him up from school and doing different things like that. And we really got close, and I really felt like that was important, because he was so young when I went off to school, so he looked at it as, why'd you leave me, Yeah. So all these different perspectives and, different levels of maturity, that you have to go through and explain. And he actually graduated high school this year. Oh, Lord, I hope I don't start crying again. So, and they live in Austin, Texas right now. So he graduated, and I had to watch his high school graduation via FaceTime. Don't cry again. So that was hard, because we couldn't be there for his graduation. Dang it. It was so crazy because, my high school graduation, it was like 69 people in my class or something crazy, just tiny. And he's going to this huge school in Austin, and like 500 plus seniors in his class, and they're on this big football field walking across the stage, one at a time. And to hear them call his name, it was like a proud mommy moment.
This little bratty kid that you probably changed his diapers.
Literally. And to see him, graduate with honors, had his little honor stoles on, literally in this empty football field. Like, it was literally just my mom there. They literally had to assign them times to show up to the field where you could walk across one at a time. But the fact that I was even able to see it on FaceTime, to see it happen, was such a blessing. And I felt so bad that I couldn't be there, because we were all, the family was all going to go out there. We had, planned this trip. My grandmother was going to get on the plane. She's like, I'm going to be there, And so I had so much guilt about that, about not being able to be there for him in that moment. But, when she showed him that we were on FaceTime, me and Zaya, my daughter, he had the biggest smile, and that just meant the world to me. To see him grow up and to see him accomplish that, it's amazing. I call him my big little brother, because this man is 6'3", like a whole foot taller than me, and that was definitely a highlight of this year, to see that happen for him. And I was so happy that he was able to walk, because, you know, they didn't even know if they were going to have any type of ceremony at all. So, you know, we called him Peanut when he was a baby. So to see that my little Peanut, you know, graduate, you know, it was so special to me.
Wow. Peanut is graduating. Now let's talk about you in high school.
Oh man, high school. I guess people viewed me as like the popular girl, which is really weird, because I was really, quote unquote, popular, I guess, from dance. We did a lot of dance team competitions. And so Emerson, we got a really good reputation, I guess, for being really well accomplished in all of the competitions that we did, because we would like sweep everybody. You know, we won state championships. You know, I choreographed my first solo at 14 and won the state championship as a soloist, but I never saw myself as like popular. But I guess, you know, a lot of the younger dancers at that point, you know, were looking up to me like, oh, she's so good, she's so talented and all this stuff. But I was just on a mission, and that was literally to get out of Yeri and to go to Juilliard. Like, that was my focus. I was focused on my academics. I was salutatorian of my class. You know, I was just really focused, and, you know, because I had a mission. I had goals that I wanted to accomplish. So that's what I was laser focused on.
Which is, I think, not traditional for people who are in high school.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
It's very easy to fall into unpopular or popular hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
Popular trends and fads. You didn't experience any of that.
Mm-mm. No.
The boys didn't distract you. Nothing, huh?
The boys became a distraction, definitely around 9th grade. But even with those distractions, like, once they got too distracting, I was like, you gotta go. Had to drop them. So yeah, I didn't let them get me off track. Thank God.
Did you go through the phase of, I'm grown now? You can't tell me nothing?
I think so, because, you know, once I did sort of started feeling myself, I guess, with dance and with the competitions and with this so-called popularity, because my mom, you know, she was very like, you know, you can't start dating till you're 16. And I was like, I'm gonna do what I want. And I had to, you know, suffer the repercussions of that, of doing what I want, you know, being heartbroken, you know, and all these different things. So I learned from it. I feel like I snapped out of that pretty quick once I saw that wasn't working, me trying to do what I want. But it definitely, you know, I think the fame aspect of it got to my head for a little bit. But again, my family, my mom, you know, they were always there to be like, you need to swell it down. Don't let that head start to blow up, because, you know, you're saying, you know, this is what you want to do. And if, you know, if professional dancer is what you want to do, you got to stay focused.
When you went through your, I got this all together, I got it figured out, at home, did it take a strain, or was everybody just kind of like, no, you know better?
Yeah, I feel like me and my mom, we kind of butt heads for a little bit because, you know, when you're that young, you're like, well, why is she trying to withhold me?
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, I had my little secret boyfriends, if you could even consider that, in the background. And I think it got to a certain point where she realized, you know, I'm going to just have to let her learn this lesson the hard way on her own. Um, I feel like at certain points, I wish she would have came in and took the ropes and pulled me a little bit tighter. But in the grand scheme of things, looking back on it now, I feel like, you know, me learning the hard way, the more organic way, was the most beneficial because, you know, I knew that it was my fault to a certain extent because I had gone against, you know, her wishes. So, yeah.
Cool. Now this says, this is 13 to 14. You are on Tompkins Street.
Yes.
I don't know how we skipped. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, we skipped that one. That was like maybe even younger than that, like 12, 13, yeah.
Okay. What does the house look like?
That was the first house that we shot at, where the big leap is happening. I remember we had this thing at Emerson called 8th grade continuation. It was like our school dance for 8th grade. I don't know, that's such a random grade to have a dance, but we had it. I guess it's like the celebration before high school. And I remember I had like this green, like chiffon sort of dress, and I remember taking pictures in front of that house, in front of that gate where we caught that image. So, and I sort of have like a greenish top on, so that that particular house is the house that holds some of the not so great memories. I think it was around that time, and maybe a little bit before that, my mom and my stepdad at the time started having some differences, and their marriage started to crumble, sort of at that point. So seeing them and hearing them argue and different things like that, you know, again, you know, going in my room, closing the door, you know, listening to music, being at dance practice after school, that was like my refuge to sort of distract myself from it and not really dealing with it head on, because I wasn't, you know, really talking about it with anyone, even with my friends. So, yeah.
How did that make you feel emotionally to see your mom? At one point, you brought this guy, your ex-husband, in.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, my stepdad, I saw you happy. I had to sacrifice what I knew to be normal between
Mm-hmm.
us. And now here we are a couple of years later. It's
Yeah, it was definitely hard because, you know, in my mind, again, I'm basing things off of fairy tales or TV shows. I'm like, this was supposed to work out. You know, when you're that young, you don't think about, like, oh, what if it doesn't? And why is it not working out? Because, again, she wasn't really open with me. You know, she doesn't want to necessarily tell me, you know, things aren't working out. So it was definitely hard. It was definitely a challenge to see her, you know, just going through that season. And so again, you know, I feel like at that stage, I didn't want to be at home. I wanted to be at the dance studio. I wanted to be somewhere else where I didn't have to deal with it head on. So yeah, it was definitely a challenge.
And then on the other side of that, now, what did that do for you guys' relationship after, okay, whatever happened, that's behind us now, moving forward, how did that affect you guys? Did it make you closer, further? did she ever help you understand, or was it just?
I don't think she did. I feel like, it was right around that time where, when it was just me and her, before all that, my mom, she was like my refuge. She was like my safe place, and then once all these other characters got introduced, it was like, okay, well, maybe, she can't be my safe place, my refuge all the time. And so, after all that emotional ups and downs, I feel like it had a strain on our relationship where we sort of became more distant, because I don't really think she was sure at the moment how to explain to me what was going on, or, not wanting me to be hurt from the whole situation, or, not wanting to reveal all the details of what was going on to me. So, yeah, it definitely put a strain on our relationship, and I felt, made us grew apart in a sense.
Let's move on to, this is Tyler Street. Is this the tan house?
Yes, that was actually the house that my grandmother moved into after she moved out of the home in Arthur place. So we were living with her for a little while after my mom and her ex-husband got divorced. So I guess in a way, to me, it was sort of reminiscent of the home on Arthur Place, because I was like, okay, back with my grandmother again. And actually my great-grandmother was living with my grandmother at the time, so it was like a full house in this little tiny house. So I have really good memories there, because again, it was like back to that family dynamic, and just being surrounded by love and delicious macaroni and cheese, and yeah. And I believe it was around the time that we were there, that's when we started going to EOC, Embassies of Christ. So that was like a whole new experience for me as well. So, yeah.
Now is that the house where you're slumped down?
Yeah.
Okay. So when we were there, you mentioned to me someone else lived down the street.
Yeah, so my uncle, my great uncle, so he literally lived across the street, like 3 houses down. And going back there was kind of tough, because he actually passed away from cancer a few years back. And his wife, one of the first memories that I have of a family member passing was his wife, and she passed away from cancer as well. So it was just like, man, so that's one of the reasons why I really like that shot, because it's like, it sort of shows that like solemn emotion. But the memories with him, he would like pretty much take care of the maintenance of the home. Like, he would always come over to my grandmother's house, cut the grass, take the garbage out and do everything. So I got to spend a lot of time with him. And so going there was pretty hard for me, because, I saw him shortly before he passed away, and, seeing him so thin and not looking like himself, that was really tough for me.
So now, on your dance journey, where were you? What was happening?
I was in my prime. Yeah, so we were like full-blown competition, like traveling all around different places, and I had started training like way more seriously at different companies and organizations in Chicago, because I really started to realize like this is what I want to do as my career. And Yeah, and it was a little bit challenging because some of my classmates, you know, they just dance for fun, you know. They were like, I don't want to be no dancer, it's just fun. So, you know, I think that's another reason why I sort of felt isolated at times, because I was like, you know, got the blinders on, really focused, and they were just like, you know, it's not that deep. I'm like, but to me it is, you know. So, yeah, I feel like I was pretty content around that time. And again, just focusing on school, focusing on trying to go get into Juilliard. And it's so funny to think about it now, because at the time, I don't even think I realized how difficult it is to get into it, or, you know, how unlikely it is to get in. Like, they literally, at the time, and it might be different now, but they only accepted 12 men and 12 women into the dance program every year. And they would host auditions throughout the entire country. So, like an audition tour, like a professional dance company.
Wait a minute.
12 men, 12 women.
Across the world.
Yes.
And you got it.
Yeah. And so I feel like, you know, I was sort of so naive at the time, where, and I don't necessarily know if it was me being naive, but that was around the time where I really started to understand the concept of faith. And maybe prematurely or immaturely, I don't know, but I was like, I'm going to get in. You know, that's what I would keep confessing. And it happened. But, you know, I didn't know how expensive it was to go there. You know, all these different things. You know, I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about that's where I wanted to go. That's where I wanted to train. So, you know, I think, you know, not letting the voices or the distractions of other people who knew how difficult it was, who knew how expensive it was, who knew nobody from Gary, nobody from Emerson has ever gone there. You know, people always encouraged me. You know, no one ever said, girl, you're not gonna get in there. You know, everyone was like, you know, you can do it if that's what you really want. So that's why I'm so insistent with my students now, to encourage them, like, you define what's impossible. And if you decide that nothing is impossible, then nothing will be impossible for you. And I really try to encourage them to believe that, because I was like, it can be done, you know, despite it never being done by someone like me, or who looked like me, or who came from where I came from.
Was there ever a plan B? What if?
So my plan B was to go to Butler University in Indianapolis, because they had a really strong ballet dance program. Because I was like, I'm either going to go to Juilliard or I'm going to be a ballerina. Those were my two options. Because the dance program at Butler, it was like strict ballet, like completely ballet. But I knew I didn't necessarily only want to do ballet. And a lot of people perceive me as that now, like, oh, she's the ballerina. She's classically trained. She does ballet. But, you know, I wanted to be well-rounded. I wanted to be a versatile artist, and I knew that's what Juilliard dancers were, and that I knew that's the type of training that you got. So that was like, the plan B was like this, and Juilliard was like this. So, you know, in retrospect, I should have made plan C, D, E, F, and G, maybe, but I didn't. And I thank God that it worked out the way that it did. But again, now that I'm in a teacher position and I mentor young dance students, I do encourage them to have that plan B, C, and D, but not as a way to give up on plan A, but to be prepared. Because like I said, I was a little bit naive in the sense, you know, that I didn't have many options. I only gave myself one option.
You mentioned that you kind of did, but not, like, you had your mind set.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually do believe, had you had drawn out, like, these other options, you would not have been able to be as focused, as determined.
Yeah.
And I really want to know, how in the world did you stay so like level-minded and focused through just looking at the wall and like all of the different highs and lows, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, some like at some point, all like how do you stay the course?
It was my faith. You know, learning what it means to have faith in God, learning what it means that we're all created for a purpose and for a reason. And, you know, at the time, you know, all I could see was dance being my purpose. But I wasn't really sure, you know, what avenue dance would lead me to or how that necessarily affected my God-given purpose. I just knew that this gift of dance wasn't something that I earned. It wasn't something that came just from my hard work, even though I knew I had to work hard, even though I had put in a lot of work, a lot of hours, a lot of money to train. You know, I knew it was something beyond that, and I always kept that into perspective, that my life, my gift, and my talents are not because of me. They're something that we're given. So I always had an appreciation for that, and, you know, just looked at it as a way for me to share that, because it wasn't something that I earned. And, you know, it's the same thing with salvation. You know, it's not something that we have to work for. It's not something that we have to toil for. It's a gift. So learning how to embrace God's love, to embrace what it means to have faith and to fully trust in Him, to fully trust in the unknown, because I felt like there were so many moments in my life where I had no idea, you know, what was going to come next, or where we're going to live next, or how long we were going to live here, or how long we were going to stay there. So that was really my peace. And learning to understand that my mom's not perfect. My grandmother's not perfect. You know, people are imperfect. So you have to find strength and comfort in something that's bigger than you. And I found that in my relationship with Christ, in my relationship with God. You know, that was what kept me steady and continues to keep me steady. And again, had it not been for that, had it not been for me going to church at a young age, being introduced to praise dance at a young age, you know, I don't think I would have been able to stay as focused and been able to believe for something so grand.
At which house do you feel like so, okay, everybody's naturally good at something. Not everybody understands or accepts that it's God-given, number one. But at what house or what age or what time, what moment did you know, okay, I'm not just good, not because of what my peers say or what the competitions and the accolades, but it's bigger than that, and it's a God-given thing. When did you realize that?
At the very beginning, with the summer camp, when I did the praise dance class, because I literally had like a out-of-body experience, you know, dancing for the first time and realizing that I could express myself through movement, because I found it so difficult to express myself as a child, because I was so quiet and, you know, just to myself, and didn't really know how to connect with people, and felt out of place, like I didn't connect with other kids my age. So, you know, when she turned this music on and she started doing like these expressive movements with her hands and with her eyes, I was like mesmerized. Like I hadn't seen anything so beautiful like that before. And so when I was able to do that with my own vessel, with my own body, it was like, whoa. Like that for me right there transformed my whole life, because God was revealing to me, I've placed this gift inside of you, and it's going to impact the world. It's going to impact people in ways you would have never imagined.
Nice. We've got one more address on the list. 17, 18. I know when I was that age, well, you couldn't tell me nothing. I don't know if that's the same for you, but tell me about that.
Well, that was my senior year. So, I remember it was like a really, it was almost like a race between me and one of my classmates. We were like fighting for the salutatorian spot. And like the valedictorian, she was already set. There was like no way anybody else could be the valedictorian. And so when my counselor let me know, like, it's between you and the other person, it's gonna be either one of you that's gonna be valedictorian. I'm like, what? So that was like fuel to my fire, trying to be salutatorian, because I wanted to be valedictorian, and I was like, it was stolen from me. But so that kept me really focused. And then again, just preparing for the Juilliard audition, that was a huge source of motivation, especially because I did the summer intensive, and I connected with another mentor there who basically, he jokingly said, I'm choreographing this dance as your Juilliard audition. And he like featured me throughout the entire dance. It's kind of like ridiculous thinking about it now. And, the other dancers were kind of like, why is he like, she's got this solo, she's got this duet, like, what? This is supposed to be a summer intensive, like, we're all in this dance. And he was a Juilliard alum, and he had actually, trained with people in this area in Chicago who I was familiar with. So he saw me as like family, and he was like, we're gonna make sure you get in. And I was just like, that's a lot of pressure. So I had actually watched a rehearsal video of that dance like a few months ago. And on the outside looking in, I'm like, if somebody else was in that spot, I would have been so mad. Like, why is he featuring this girl throughout this whole dance? But, if I were him, I probably wouldn't have did that. But, yeah. And I literally saw it as that because, he told me, I want to highlight you so that they see you, and you can't be afraid. You have to go out there, and show them why you deserve to be here, because they're going to look for every reason why you don't. And I was like, okay, that's a big old load on my back. Thanks a lot. But, even with him saying that, anytime I perform, it's never like a performance to me. I'm never putting on a show. No matter what the content or the context of the dance is, I'm telling a story. And that's the only way I can approach it. Like, as an artist, I'm telling a story. I'm not here to impress you. I'm not here to show you what great technique I have. I'm not here to show you how many years I train. I'm here to tell a story. And that's always my perspective. And that's the only way I can go about it. And that's what I did. And, my teacher from Emerson, Mr. Brewer, he flew out to New York for that Juilliard Summer Intensive performance, and he was even blown away. He talked to some of the instructors from the school, and they were like, she has what it takes, basically. And, had it not been for people like that who were, spurring me on and pushing me, because that dance was hard. That dance was hard, and the training there was nothing like I had experienced before. Like, I thought I was good until I went there. Until I experienced like something way outside of the box, way outside of my comfort zone. So it was really humbling, and it was really just like an awakening for me that there's so much more that I didn't even know.
When you got accepted.
That's 23rd. That one right there.
Okay. So, were you still in high school?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so did they call you? What
They
happened?
did. So I was actually homesick that day. I didn't go to school that day. And I was like on pins and needles for weeks after the audition. And it was so crazy because as if the Juilliard audition wasn't enough pressure, they had a MTV reality show filming at our audition. So they were like following this other young lady who was auditioning, and so there was like a whole film crew at the audition. I'm like, y'all couldn't wait until, you couldn't stage this, which they actually did, which was funny because I remember, being there all night. My mom was there, and they literally staged the girl like walking into the dance studio like as if it was, earlier in the day. And I was like, what in the world? And so as if that wasn't enough pressure, we had a whole film crew there. So I think the audition was maybe like in February of my senior year. And I don't think we found out until March or April. So I was just like waiting the whole time. And they called my personal cell phone. And I remember seeing the New York area code, and my heart was just like, ugh. And that's when they told me that I got in, and I was just like in shock and relieved, just like all in one. And I remember calling my mom, and I was like, "Are you driving?" She's like, "Yeah." I was like, "You need to pull over." And so I told her, she's just sobbing, like on the phone for like 10 minutes straight. And I called my grandmother, called my aunt, and they were just elated. And it was just like a sigh of relief for me. And I felt like, okay, now I got a new mission. I got another journey ahead of me now that has happened. Now it's like, okay, God, what do you want me to do with this? What's going to happen from this? And it was just like, wow, that's how I felt. Mourning turned to dance.
Mourning turned to dance. Elaborate.
So it's based off of scripture in Psalms, where it's talking about he turned my mourning into joyful dancing. I think it's the New Living Translation that includes the joyful part. And I really like that because I don't feel like I was sad as a child necessarily, but I experienced, a lot of challenges, a lot of hurdles, and God revealing to me, just little tidbits, little parcels of my purpose through dance is what sustained me through those times and what continues to, even to this day. I want people to understand that I'm not, sharing this testimony, sharing this journey from a place of complete overcoming or complete, like, everything's perfect in my life now. I'm perfect. That doesn't exist. And, dance, especially this year, I realized that I was almost using dance as, like I said before, almost like a security blanket. Like it was something, a way for me to almost hide behind my issues or my challenges, and instead of relying on God and instead of relying on my relationship with Him. So now I feel like I'm dancing through life. Like life is my dance, and not just the profession of dance, not just teaching dance, but I now dance through life. And that's where the joy comes from, because now it's not about my circumstances. It's not about if this is a good season or a bad season or a hurdle that I'm facing. It's like now life is the dance for me. Waking up every morning is the dance for me. And, being a mother, I was talking to one of my mentors a few weeks ago, and I told her how I'm so much more fulfilled as an artist now, because giving birth to my daughter with no pain medication was the greatest and most challenging dance I'll ever do. So after that, it was like, okay, this is nothing. Like, I embrace the process now, especially when I know I'm going into a difficult rehearsal process. I'm not so stressed. Like, I feel like in college I was constantly comparing myself to other dancers and feeling inadequate and things like that, where I was stopping myself from a lot of opportunities. And I think that was another reason why God had to bring me back home, bring me back to my roots, to reveal where I initially fell in love with dance and why. Because it became about, wanting to fulfill that professional career, wanting to be hired with this prestigious company, wanting to dance overseas, instead of being about the root of why I fell in love with it, the root of being genuine, being pure, being a storyteller. It had gotten so built up because, this was the expectation. You're a Juilliard grad. All your colleagues are getting accepted into all these companies and you're not. And it became about that, as opposed to you just being in love with it and being true to who you are. And so coming back and just experiencing life and maturing, now I enjoy dance so much more. And it's like I'm back to my childhood days where I just did it for the joy and not for the performance aspect or for the money, because it's not enough money in the first place. And, now I don't beat myself up in rehearsals like, oh, you didn't get it right. Now I'm able to enjoy it. And like I said, I dance my hardest dance. That was giving birth to my daughter, especially when people were doubting me, like, oh, she's going to ask for pain meds anytime now, and feeling, not letting the voices of others and not letting the doubt or the voice of my own thoughts that were negative to inhibit me. Now I dance through life. It's not just when I'm actually physically dancing. It's life, and every breath that God gives me, that's the dance now. That's why I have so much joy, even in the midst of whatever trial or circumstance that I'm in.
You mentioned the hardest dance is having a baby, so you have a family now.
Yes.
What's that like?
Amazing. Nothing like I could have ever dreamed or imagined. My little girl, my husband, our daughters, they bring me so much joy, like so much inspiration. And especially seeing Zaya now and how she wants to dance. And she's like, I want to dance like you, Mommy. It's just so incredible to me to see like this mini me. And to know that, she's watching everything that I do, every move that I make, outside the dance studio, inside the dance studio. She started coming to classes with me at like 6 months old. So she's been in a dance studio pretty much her whole life. So it's just beautiful, and it gives me a newfound purpose, that I'm not just a dancer. I'm not just a Juilliard grad. I'm not just the things that happen to me. I'm more than that. And God wants more of me and more, and for me to reveal the different layers and the different sides of me that I usually don't. And I think being a wife, being a mother has allowed me to build up that comfort And, being able to confront my past has allowed for more healing now, because, they say when you get married, it's like all that stuff starts to come up, that whatever you didn't deal with, once you get married or once you have a child, it comes to the surface. And that's very true in my case. So just figuring out how to continue to heal, to continue to be in process, while raising a child, while, being connected with my husband, so it's given me, it's like blown up my purpose even more, to allow me to even connect with my students, me being vulnerable to them and, sharing with them the challenges that I face in school or the challenges that I'm facing right now. It's allowed me to become more human to them, whereas they saw me as like, oh, the teacher that's on all the newspaper articles in the hallway. Now they see me as, someone who they can relate to a little bit more. And, I'm not superwoman anymore. I'm human just like they are. And so that's been a breath of fresh air to me. Having my own daughter has helped me to connect with my students more as well, because I understand them a little bit more. And, it's helped my family relationships because, just having their support, having their love for her, for my daughter, and for our family is helped to heal some of those disconnects that were there before. So, right now, I'm still on a healing journey, both physically, mentally, spiritually. This year, like I stated before, has been a challenge for so many people. It's been especially challenging for me because this year I was diagnosed with a brain condition, epilepsy, and it has been causing me to have seizures, and come the tears. And more important than anything, I feel like it's definitely taught me what it truly means to live by faith. I thought I knew what it meant to live by faith before, but literally, every morning that I wake up, it's like I'm living by faith. I'm alive by faith.
For a purpose.
Yeah. And it's a miracle, that I'm still here, because some of the seizures, could have very easily allowed me not to be here. And I'm thankful that all this stuff and beyond that I went through it, because I felt like it prepared me for now and prepared me for where I am in my faith fight. And as I'm waiting for the full manifestation of my healing to come, I can still be joyful, and I don't have to let, this diagnosis define who I am, because it's not who I am. I'm healed. That's who I am. That's what I am. I'm a child of God, and it feels like a relief to get it out there, because I'm pretty private. I'm not the type that likes to vent on social media. And that's not a knock to anyone who likes to. Right, to each his own. But this is something that I have kept pretty much to myself and to my family, because I don't ever want people to feel like they have to feel sorry for me or have pity on me because of it. But it has affected a lot of things. And I'm still in it. I'm still fighting it. It's not like everything's great now. And just the unpredictable nature of it, that's the most challenging part about it. But again, I have peace. And everything that I've been through has allowed me to have that peace. And, when it first started happening, it's just like, you're just like, why? Why me? Why now? And I know that when I do fully overcome and when I do have the full manifestation of my healing and I'm able to look back on it just like I'm able to look back on all the other challenges, I know it's going to serve a purpose. I know it's going to allow healing and freedom for someone else.
You said it's unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
Just like every time you moved.
Yeah.
It brought on a different journey, a different turn, a different way of thinking, a different aspect of life. I don't think this is any different.
Nope.
So it's not something that you can't handle.
Right. And it's why I'm able to not live in fear. Because I trust in God. And I want people to know that if he saved my life 5, 6, 7,000 times, he'll do the same for you. He's no respecter of persons. He loves us all, and he offers the gift of salvation to us all. And I feel like it's so important now more than ever, especially with the climate of our world that it's in, for people to know that. And for me, as a believer of Jesus Christ, to get that message out there and to spread the good news and to say God loves you. No matter what you've done, no matter what you've been through, those things don't have to define you. Let God's love define who you are. Let God's love lead you, and let that be your light. Let that be your strength in the unpredictable times, just like we're in right now. It's just, everything's unpredictable right now with this COVID, with the election, everything, but to be able to sit here and say, I have peace, I have joy, it's only because of God. It's only because of my relationship with him. It's only because I know that I have purpose, and I know that I'm pursuing it wholeheartedly without fear. If you want to begin or renew your relationship with Jesus Christ, please pray this prayer with me out loud. Heavenly Father, I come to you in the name of Jesus. I'm calling on you, and I ask Jesus to come into my heart to be my Savior. I confess that Jesus is Lord, and I believe in my heart that God raised him from the dead. I ask you to forgive me of all of my sins, and I ask that you would help me to forgive others. Please send the Holy Spirit to teach me what to do, to continually become more like you. I accept Jesus as my personal Lord and Savior, and will live each day according to his will. I thank you for your never-ending love and grace over my life. Amen.